It wasn't too long ago, in 2006, when a young man was found in a very confused state in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. He was wearing old-fashioned clothes, and hanging from his neck was an antique camera. People thought he was some kind of madman, but little did they know that he was about to become part of a tale of time travel. In a video aired on Geoscope, the man introduced himself as Sergei Ponomarenko. When the police asked him for his ID, they were shocked to see that it had been issued by a country that no longer existed, the Soviet Union. As you know, Ukraine was once a part of the Soviet Union, but by the time this incident happened, it had already been 2 decades since the Soviet Union had collapsed. What puzzled the police was not the ID itself, because old Soviet IDs could still be found, but the fact that Sergei looked like a man of 22-25 years old. Yet the ID showed his date of birth as 1932. Not only that, but the photograph on the ID matched Sergei exactly. How could a man born in 1932 still look like he was in his 20s in 2006, when he should have been 74 years old? When the police asked him what date it was that day, Sergei, after pausing to think, replied, April 23, 1958. At that point, the police were convinced he was insane and took him to a mental hospital. There, a doctor named Pablo Trikov examined his mental health. Sergei himself had no idea what was happening to him. When the doctor asked him if he remembered how he had come straight from 1958 to 2006, Sergei explained that he had gone out for a city walk during the day to take good photographs. While walking, he saw a strange object flying in the sky. The doctor asked him what it looked like. Sergei said, "I can't really explain it, but I did take a picture with my camera." Saying this, he handed over his camera. The doctor was surprised, but his astonishment only grew when he saw that it was a very old Yasha Flex camera. Surprisingly, the camera didn't look like an old relic, it was in working condition. The real challenge, however, was extracting the photos, because the film used in that camera had been discontinued in the 1970s. An expert named Adam Prosnick was called in to help. Upon checking, he found that the film roll had actually been manufactured in 1956. When the photographs were developed, things got even more puzzling. The photos showed old Kyiv city cars, buildings, and street signs from decades ago. Some pictures even featured buildings that had long since been demolished. Among them were photos of Sergei with his girlfriend, looking exactly the same as the Sergei sitting before the doctor in 2006. And then came the final photo on the roll, the one Sergei had spoken of. It clearly showed an unidentified flying object. The doctor found it nearly impossible to believe, but the evidence left him no choice but to accept that Sergei had somehow traveled from 1958 to 2006.
But before any further conclusion could be drawn, something strange happened. Sergei stepped out of the hospital room, closed the door behind him, and was never seen again. He vanished without a trace, leaving behind only his camera, a few photographs, and his bizarre story. When the police investigated further, they found that in 1960, a man named Sergei Ponomarenko had indeed gone missing. The woman seen in the old photos, his girlfriend, was also tracked down. She was by then a 70-year-old woman. She confirmed that Sergei had mysteriously disappeared in 1958 but returned a few days later. However, in 1960, he disappeared once again and never returned. But there's another twist. Many years later, she received a photograph of Sergei dated 2015. In this picture, Sergei looked older, standing in front of a city filled with skyscrapers. On the back of the photo was a note written by him saying he would return soon, but for unknown reasons, he never did. This fascinating story was shown on a Ukrainian TV show and quickly went viral on the internet. But the question remains, was it real? Before answering, let's first understand, is time travel even possible? In one sense, all of us are constantly time traveling, moving step by step into the future. Every hour that passes proves this. But what if someone could experience an hour in just 30 minutes? They would essentially leap half an hour ahead of the rest of us. This idea was first introduced by Albert Einstein in his theory of special relativity, which showed that time and space doesn't flow the same for everyone. It depends on speed and mass. Just as oxygen levels change with altitude, time also changes with speed and gravity. On Earth, our time is influenced by the planet's mass and speed. But if we were on Jupiter, where the mass is much larger, time would pass more slowly. According to relativity, the faster you move, the slower time passes for you. Imagine traveling through space at near light speed for 5 years. To you, only 5 years would have passed, but back on Earth, 36 years would have gone by. This difference is called time dilation. To test Einstein's theory, an experiment was conducted in 1971 called the Hafelek-Eating experiment. 12 atomic clocks were synchronized, with some placed on planes flying eastward, some westward, and some kept on Earth. When compared afterward, the eastward clocks were found to be 59 nanoseconds slower, while the westward clocks were 273 nanoseconds faster, proving that time moves differently depending on speed and direction of travel. Another way to time travel into the future is through gravity. Einstein's general relativity states that the stronger the gravity, the slower time passes. In 2010, this was proven in an experiment using atomic clocks placed at different heights. The clock closer to the ground, where gravity was stronger, ticked slightly slower than the one higher up. Although these differences are tiny, they prove that if we were near a black hole, time would pass much slower compared to Earth. This concept was even shown in the movie Interstellar, where one hour near a black hole equaled 7 years on Earth. In fact, even our GPS satellites need regular corrections because their clocks run slightly faster due to lower gravity and their high orbital speed around Earth. Without these adjustments, our phones wouldn't be able to give accurate locations. So, yes, time travel into the future is theoretically possible, but practically, it's nearly impossible with our current technology. We need a spacecraft that can travel at near light speed or access to a black hole, neither of which is achievable today. Now, coming back to Sergei Ponomarenko's story, how true was it? In reality, this story first appeared in 2012 on a Ukrainian TV show called Aliens: Reality. It was featured in the 3rd episode, titled The Time Traveler. Later, internet users discovered inconsistencies. For example, the CCTV footage showed the date as Wednesday, April 23, 2006, but the actual calendar shows that date was a Sunday, meaning the footage was staged and the timestamp was added later. Experts also noticed that the Soviet stamp on Sergei's ID didn't match authentic stamps of that time, and the 2015 photo was also suspicious because many of the skyscrapers in the background were repeated and identical, suggesting the image was photoshopped. No official police investigation records or mentions of the famous Dr. Pablo Trikov could be found anywhere online, raising further doubts. This led many to believe that the story was simply a well-crafted hoax made purely for the TV show's ratings. The confusion around time travel usually comes from the assumption that if it's possible to travel into the future, then the past must also be accessible. But scientists argue otherwise because traveling into the past creates paradoxes. For example, imagine traveling 10 years into the past and destroying the time machine itself, then how could you have traveled in the first place? This logical contradiction is known as a time travel paradox. In 2009, physicist Stephen Hawking even held a party, but only released the invitations a year later. His point was simple. If past time travel were possible, someone from the future would have shown up. But no one did. So, boss, while the story of Sergei Ponomarenko is gripping and mysterious, evidence strongly suggests it was fiction created for entertainment. Hopefully, this channel video helped you understand the fascinating concept of time travel. Thank you for your kind comments. We'll see you again in the next amazing video.